see here. Oh, yeah.
There it is.
Little retweet action. Yeah.
Yeah.
On the scope. Did you
changed
see
the retweet
Periscope's
feature.
going away?
I heard, but it's just going to be part of Twitter, I guess, right? Isn't it just like Twitter Live at this point?
Is that right?
I think so.
Hmm.
Anywho's,
Hmm.
we should get this party started, I guess, right?
I suppose.
We suppose, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Folks are showing up.
Folks are showing up, yeah. Yeah, all right. We should get it going because we're on a tight schedule today, huh?
That's right.
All right. Welcome to the Undefined podcast, the only engineering podcast with a 2-drink minimum. I'm Jared Palmer.
And I'm Ken Wheeler. And again, today we have two very special guests, none other than Jared Palmer and Ken Wheeler. What's going on, guys?
Hey, how's it going, man?
Oh man, just getting ready
Getting ready for the holiday.
for the holiday.
Merry Christmas, belated Happy Hanukkah, and I guess Happy Kwanzaa.
Yeah. All whatever,
There's Mahana Kwanzaa, if it
a
was
fucking festivus
Festivus,
to
right.
those who are partaking.
Right, exactly. But anyways, this was a big week in the React ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
We had a little bit of an announcement.
Little holiday
React
present.
server components,
Wow.
which is I don't know about the name, but potentially very game changing. In many ways. Ken, I'll let you talk about. Why don't you just lay out the problem with the web, but then also talk about their solution before we just debate it and discuss it. I'll let you set it up.
So I mean, there's a couple different problems in play here, and it's not just bundle sizes, right? Like obviously, like there's like the we're shipping too much code to the client thing, right? But then there's also like I was arguing with Mike Sharov the other day on Twitter. It's the the waterfall data dependency thing when you're co-locating your data, right?
Keep going to that. Just like the idea that you if you litter stuff all around the screen, all your data fetching, right?
Yeah.
These little tiny areas all over the screen. What happens is instead of making one big request like you would if you were writing like an MVC Rails app, right?
You make 40 requests.
You get 40 requests, and you get 40 loading spinners too, right?
40 loading spinners indeed.
Yeah. And it's janky,
which is not ideal, and it's especially not ideal when you have those requests depending on those other requests.
Yes, and that's if you popped up in the network tab of Chrome DevTools, you'd see this like basically an angle of waterfall, right? Waterfall requests. Now, there are some waterfalls that are good waterfalls, right? Like if you have shared data and you have a client side router and it's fresh, you don't need to refetch it on every time you change the URL. That's the traditional like single page application model, which was popularized. When did that start, Ken?
Single page apps. Wow. That started, I want to say 7-8 years ago, probably.
Right. It was where mobile started, right? Because basically the idea was, and we all kind of forget how this happened, right? It was like, I have a mobile app. It needs to talk to my backend through JSON. I already have this API. Why don't I write my web app the same way as I write my mobile app, right? Like basically a client only application. As far as I know, that's how it started.
Like way back then, right? Like we had like jQuery Ajax, right? And that was a big deal, right? Because like, so I worked in e-commerce for like 10 years or something like that, right? And like what would happen was like when you clicked like fucking red on the shoes, right? Like you're on the black shoes, but you clicked like the red variant of the shoes, right? Like it would refresh the whole page. Right? Like, all right, let's go to like the fucking red edition, and it would refresh the whole entire thing. And then you had jQuery Ajax, right? Which then like you would just reload just that portion, right? So you'd go out and you'd fetch like the PHP for just like the you get like the new images, you'd update like some forms and shit like that, like on the inside of there. And you're like, oh, sweet, I don't have to reload the whole page. And then you got Backbone. And Backbone was where I really started to see for the first time, right? Like really like client side routing. And you had a lot of like, what the fuck was that shit called? Like Sprout Core or some shit like that?
Yeah, I remember reading about that. Yeah.
Yeah, like there was like a lot of these libraries that came out where you would do everything on the client.
And then basically we started to see the shift from, well, let's just continue to push the client as far as possible, right? And especially I think as you had like really cross-platform mobile became like native mobile became real, you ended up having these API services, right? The dawn of the REST API, right? SOAP went away, JSON comes out, becomes popular, like REST APIs become popular again, right? And now everybody's like trying to have these like fat clients, right? On the web.
Yeah.
And basically I'd say we're still in that phase. React is like is basically the latest and greatest version of all of that. But I also find interesting too, by the way, speaking of React for one moment, the React in the community is not the way that Facebook uses React. Has never been.
Not at all. Never
So
has
this
been.
idea of using React Router, or Reach Router, or any client only fat client single page like create React app is not the way Facebook uses React.
No.
That's like not even close to how what that sets you up for.
Fuck, they don't even use regular modules. Everything's haste.
Yeah. I mean, if there have been some attempts to port Facebook's data loading strategy to React in the past, actually, right? There was that thing like React Server that the guys from Redfin built, that basically took, what is it called, Big Pipe,
Yeah.
and tried to like port it to JavaScript. But Facebook, until recently, until FB5, has very much been a PHP application, like server, like very much so, right? It's only until this latest iteration of with the Facebook redesign that they've transitioned to this, call it server rendered single page application model, which is what Next.js effectively is, right? It's a single page application that has the performance optimization and SEO capabilities, but you still structure it like a single page application, requesting, you're not going straight from database to page, right? That's not how it works, right? You still have to go through a REST endpoint or a GraphQL endpoint to get data to the web page.
And it's funny. It's funny to not do that, right? You remember, like in like PHP, like you go like directly from the database, serve up the markup from the database.
Yeah, the controller would be like you actually render markup
Rails
controller, right? In PHP land, and you just have a template in Rails, Django, etc. And by the way, that's still a very productive way to build applications. Like that shouldn't be underestimated.
Unbelievably.
If you're a single person team, the Rails thing is very compelling. But without further ado, I sort of set the stage. This could have dramatically changed as of Monday, this entire paradigm.
Yeah.
Or not. So Ken, tell us what React server components are and how they progress this discussion.
You might explain it better than me.
Okay.
You've played with it.
So I'll give it a shot. So basically, Facebook, the React core team announced on Monday React server components, which is a new server-side renderer and the culmination of lots of research over many years at this point, to improve performance and limit the size of the bundle sizes, so the amount of JavaScript being downloaded. So instead of having these super fat clients with client-side routing, they're actually going to drive performance by moving and shifting data fetching to the server. And if you've been a React user for many years, you'll know that Facebook has actually never took a stance on how you should fetch data. And the reason for that is actually because they fetch data, or used to fetch data, through Big Pipe and other mechanisms,
very different way.
Relay, etc. But the React core team has never like thrown itself into behind Relay as like the official way to fetch data in React, right? They've kind of been like, well, whatever. But there's never really been a way to do that. So React server components are basically Relay without the GraphQL for all intents and purposes. And what it allows you to do is basically, and the way I like to think of it is, effectively, you can asynchronously wait for components, or data, I should say, inside of render. So you could just toss in a wait in the middle of a render function in React, which is mind blowing. It doesn't actually use async await syntax. It actually, you write it synchronously, but effectively using suspense and the new streaming server renderer, It's as if you were able to magically pause rendering, wait for data or resources, and then resume. And this all happens in server land. And with new React server components, which are different than React client components, which are different than React, I guess they're called shared components now, only with a Webpack plugin, only the client side components that actually have client side state, those are the only ones that that's JavaScript is actually shipped down to the client.
Wait. What's the difference between client components and shared components? I missed that.
Okay, so there are three types of components technically now. You name them server components.
Yeah.
So something .server.js, and these components cannot have state. Okay. They also can only have props that are serializable to JSON, which is a weird like wrinkle. And I may have just said that slightly improperly, but basically there's some nuance to what types of props can be serialized. So like passing a function to a server component or
that's not going to work.
Not going to work.
Yeah.
Right. For all the reasons you might imagine, right? This is still using some sort of JSON-based protocol to stream this stuff down. A client component, it can have state and can import shared components that don't have state and can even import server components. But a server component cannot import client components without itself being either a shared component, without being a shared component. A shared component doesn't have a special file name. It basically can work on both the server and the client. And as far as I know, it too like has it can have state, but the state only exists on the client basically. And it's not, the state isn't synced between the server and the client. This is different than the model of like Phoenix LiveViews. So if you're familiar with Phoenix, which is an Elixir framework that's like Rails.
I haven't fucked with Phoenix. Have you?
I have. I read the tutorial. Basically, it's like a functional Rails, and it's written in Elixir, which is call it the Reason ML of Erlang. Or like the reason is to OCaml is like Elixir, I guess, is to Erlang. Phoenix is like the Rails of Elixir. Anyways, it has a
Erlang sounds like a dude that wears a trench coat.
Right. Basically, with Phoenix LiveViews, you can use like WebSockets and this little JS client they have that effectively puts all the state in a server-side environment. So you basically like render templates from the server and you stream down the diff. It like sockets down the diffs basically. And so it's crazy fast. Makes it really good for like chat clients and stuff like that. But the state is like basically synced between the browser and the server, if that makes sense, through the Phoenix LiveView templating system. So what's different about this though is that, as I mentioned, it's synced like almost perfectly.
This is more of like a send it up and then hand it off kind of deal.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but like I actually was researching this a little bit more, and I read through the form because I was like, how does this impact forms in React? Because obviously, as the guy who wrote Formic, I'm the forms guy in React. Like this is important to me.
Yeah.
Right?
What are the implications on the?
So I researched Phoenix. So basically, as far as I can tell, nothing, because while there may be some parts of your application that you don't actually need, you never needed state for anyway in your forms, right? Like you just get away with that. Now in a server side land, like you really don't need it, right? It's like whatever. That's not going to change. Like you still can use, if you can use uncontrolled components, great. Uncontrolled inputs, that's fine. But a lot of the final remaining pieces of your code that are going to need client state are actually forms, right? That's like, you can't do like dynamic. You're going to need state to do like dynamic.
It has to be client side.
Yes, that's all client side. So that's not changing. So from by and large, like I don't see a difference. And then people are asking, well, what if you like did validation on the server? And from what I can tell, this is the key insight. Because your state is not actually synced between client and server, you'd have to serialize your client payload, put it up to the server, like do stuff to it, operate on it, and then you'd obviously stream the diff back down. But the diff, instead of being JSON in React server components, is going to be JSX basically, in this interesting protocol. And from what I can tell in my discussions with the React team, that's not going to be worth it for most validation on simple stuff, right? Like why make something not async, but basically why take the round trip, right? versus
the rigmarole for basically nothing.
For nothing. And like this is actually code that you should ship to the client because you do want to validate user input because it's untrusted, right? You don't want to send up unvalidated stuff, even if it is super fast, to like your server. That's
If I
just
was going to
stupid.
validate on the server, I'd be using like a fucking form submit.
Yeah. I mean, and you can still do that. So nothing's really changed, right?
Yeah.
But users still need like inline feedback and stuff like that. They still need like, and if you can do it on the client, like check if this is an email address, like just do it, right? Like if you can, is this number greater than 10? Like that's fine. That's faster than doing this whole round trip. Like that's insane. So basically that's the gist there.
Mm.
But I think the biggest thing that gets me excited is data fetching in React can now happen on the server, and potentially we ship less JavaScript to the client, which is cool for perf. That's always been a knock. I know you that triggers you.
Yeah, I think
But you also, I think what also excites me is that there's an entire group of people that are tweaked.
yeah.
So maybe share some of your thoughts there, Ken.
I think that it's exciting in the fact that it's going to, I feel like it's like a primitive, right? That existing tooling is going to capitalize on. As an individual developer, right? Let's say like implementing something, I don't, I never looked at it as something that I needed, right? But like I'd be super interested to see what like Remix or Next does with it or that sort
So
of thing.
you're saying so the frameworks themselves will be the first to touch and implement and deal with this.
Yeah.
You think it'll be like just like an implementation detail of one of said meta frameworks, quote unquote.
Yeah, I mean, I don't give like a fucking colossal fuck about it because my perf problems aren't from bundle size. They're from shit ton of things on screen. Which
But doesn't this help you or potentially with like time to time to first and like what is it, time to interactive?
Yeah.
And like time to first paint?
Yeah, which is huge.
First contentful paint, I guess it is.
But
right?
again, most of my problems are runtime.
So this is like huge for e-commerce, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like
Because you
that.
don't have
Like,
this parse, you're not parsing such a big bundle, right?
I mean, are there actual metrics around like
How much faster it is? Yeah,
yeah.
Facebook said it decreased their bundle size by 30%. And they're not even done with all the optimizations because they basically ran code mods to convert they could to server versus client components.
So I don't want to be a fucking dick.
Yeah.
But 30% of a meg and a half of JavaScript isn't shit.
Yeah, but if you're Facebook, that's
if you're Facebook, it's fucking huge,
millions,
right? Like, if you're Facebook or if you're like super big co, but if you're Timmy Dickhead writing,
your
mom and pops
yeah.
fucking food store ecom, right? That doesn't translate into like huge fucking wins.
No. But if you're a mid-size e-commerce site,
yeah. And any little bit counts because more often than not, it's death by 1,000 cuts.
For sure.
It's not like fucking this one big problem to solve, right? It's like all this shit, right? So, I'm certainly happy to take 30% where I can get it.
Yeah. I wonder, they didn't talk about this in demo, but I wonder how this impacts some of the like some of the CSS and JS frameworks that have like theme providers that have state in them. And I wonder like how, I haven't played with this yet, but like emotion or something. Well, first of all, I don't know if you could stream CSS and JS the way that you need to stream CSS and JS. I just don't know if that's possible.
Yeah.
But like it'd be hilarious, kind of funny if like that's impossible.
Fucking yeah. I again, like, right, like I haven't really played with this that much. And part of that is actually, do you know like when this is gonna like be stably released?
So there's some missing pieces to it. So like they actually haven't done the HTML, like the React component server part to HTML. So like if you look at the demo and you view source in the demo, it looks like an SPA right now. Like it's just like a single script tag. Because they haven't done the like the actual like full hydration part. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
but they're working on that.
I guess what I'm getting at is that I gave 3 different talks about 3 different versions of suspense over the past 3 years.
I know.
And
I did the first one.
I find it very fucking difficult to truly give a fuck about.
Yeah, until it's there. But I
until
know
it's real.
I know the Next.js team is working on this. Like, and they plan to ship this within the like first half of 2021. That being said, right now, I believe the other issue is there's like some not material ones, which are like, how do you deal with pagination? How do you, instead of like killing the
Routing.
entire view, routing is actually the big elephant in the room, right? So that's actually the biggest problem right now. If you look at the demo that they posted, there's no router. In fact, they jumped through tons of hoops to get around this in the demo, but there's clearly no router. And in this new paradigm, routing is going to be the only thing you need the framework, if you use a framework even at this point, for, right?
I think there's some niceties.
No, but if you think about
involved.
what I mean, aside from the Webpack config, right? What you're going to use your
Images.
framework for, sure, fine. That's nice to have, not need to have.
Yeah.
Right? Those are right. That's nice to have. But like the router and how routing and transitions and interactions and coordination of this new data fetching paradigm works, because now routing and data are going to be like intrinsically linked, where they weren't necessarily always linked before. You didn't have to code it that way, but they are now.
I mean, sort of.
No, I mean,
not as tightly, perhaps.
this has changed over the years. Like React Router went from like, yeah, fetch data with us to like, don't fetch data with us. But I don't know. Okay, let's also talk about other things in web dev here. We also had the DHH and the Basecamp folks release Hotwire,
which looks fucking sick.
Looks pretty sick too, which is kind of a similar concept.
By the way, I just want to say for the record that if they ship this by Q2, I'll shove a mechanical keyboard up my ass.
Oh my god, that's I can't wait to show that to everyone.
Dude, somebody on the team over there is like, fucking, I'm doing it, dude, and I'm fucking holding them to this. So tell folks about Hotwire, what that's all about. Well, I mean, I haven't really seen it, right? There's a lander with a video.
The demo's sped up. It's really funny with the landing page, hotwire.dev. The demo is like sped up to, I don't even know what. It's just talking super fast, but I had to like watch it a couple times. But basically, like, the deal with Hotwire is it's like TurboLinks 2 effectively, and from
Megalinks,
right? So it's like it's a combination of like TurboLinks, called Turbo, which is like better than TurboLinks, Stimulus, and Stimulus, which is their like client side JavaScript framework. Basically, you can render in Hotwire slices of HTML, which are like just basically slices of Ruby templates,
and
mix and match them basically. And so you can mark areas of your Ruby templates to be like hot effectively. And then those just magically can pop into other views. And you can basically, it's like it's instead of, think about it just like little iframes everywhere, but they're not actually iframes. They're actually like this protocol that they built. But that's the best way to think about it. You just have like iframes into other parts of your application, and you treat the frames like you would little like slices of your app. So it gets back to this idea of like, what we really want for components, quote unquote, are like little fucking iframes.
Yeah.
Right. And same sort of concept there. And they have some broadcast stuff where you can make the updates real time with some Rails jazz. They show off this like little chat widget, and they have APIs for you to go in and out of the iframe. Sorry, not the iframe, of the frame, turbo frame, so that like it's not. So you can basically, it's interactive the way you'd expect it to be, if that makes sense. And it's a cool demo. Look, it's if you're a Rails person and you're a single person and you're a one-man band, I gotta tell you, man, it's like kind of compelling at the moment to see what this Rails offering can do. Right? Like, name a more productive setup.
And the thing is that if it's not throwing errors, it pretty much works pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's possible that something like a Blitz re-implemented with this new paradigm of like go for directly from database to like, or maybe like Next.js, go directly from database to view, I'll call it, like PHP style. And if that gets done in React, and whoever gets that, I think is going to be in business. But I still think we're like 6 to 8 months to 9 months away from that.
Call me crazy, but I'm going to throw a hot take at you.
Yeah.
I bet that, there's all these frameworks out there, right? But I bet like if me or you went and took any app that we wrote in React or Hotwire, whatever you want to call it, right? Whatever you want to do. If we rewrote that in PHP and jQuery, I guarantee you it would be faster in every imaginable way.
Probably right.
Not just load, not just server response, not time to interactive, runtime performance. Every single part of that would be faster.
Yeah, I mean, that makes all the sense in the world to me. But
I
also
think
that's true without a doubt, right? That's not even a fair comparison, right? Because you
yeah,
have PHP, you'd have basically you'd have really fast server side templating sprinkled with JavaScript, which we know is faster, right? That's like not even
like infinitely faster. And what's funny is like I might not have been able to write it faster back then when I was writing PHP and jQuery, but now I know fucking factually that I would write it faster,
dude. And if you used Alpine JS instead of jQuery, to like, have you seen Alpine?
Mm-hmm.
You know how it like virtualizes the entire like tree, so you like just like use like magic strings for stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
things interactive. I even think it would be faster.
Barely even use jQuery. I mean, you could use modern JavaScript. You just use fucking modern DOM APIs and fetch, and
but it'd be spaghetti code. And the question is like, how far does that scale? And like, and by the way, you could set up some abstractions with PHP that look like components, right? Because that's ultimately what React was, right? JSX was supposed to be just PHP in the browser. That's where React sort of started, right? I mean, so, XHP looks like React.
I want to respond to something in the chat. They said then you'd have an unmaintainable mess with DOM and internal state out of sync. And I don't think that's true.
Wow.
I don't think that it has to be that way. I think that a lot of the time it would end up architected like that, but I think you could architect it maintainably.
I think it depends on your app.
No, I think that, if you held, certain ideology tight, that
like what
it would remain.
Like what?
If you let's say for example, like you didn't mutate things.
Okay, yeah.
Or if you separated things out, by general concern or something like that. If you took any of these things and applied them.
Yeah, and I think also maybe limited the number of plugins that you'd use, right? That like
the
code needs to be first party. Like you,
I mean, if you kept it first party and then just kept a tight leash on
how I think when you get the third party stuff, that's when you're going to break your programming model.
Like, what's different from React State and an array reduce? What's truly different?
Oh, then like a pub sub mechanism.
Yeah, I mean, actually, as a matter of fact, like a lot of the modern reactivity libraries fucking perform better.
True. I mean, if you look at look at Redux, effectively that is a glorified event emitter. So
the hardest part here would be events. That's the gift that we're given with a lot of these frameworks is events, right? Like because like ES6 templates or whatever, right? Or the template strings, right? That'll take you most of the way.
Yeah.
It's just attaching events to them, which is the pain in the ass.
Yep.
But I mean, you could put together like a delegation model.
Or just use Alpine. Like Alpine, or just use Alpine, and then you have your events taken care of for you, right? Then you're just deal with your handlers, right? I mean, Alpine gives you X on click, and you're done. Like, and you don't. There's no like mount point or whatever.
Should we get hats made that say "Make Web Development 2006" again?
Maybe, dude. Like, I mean, I tell you what, I did something like what you've just described with a WordPress site.
Did you? Was it sick though?
The parent list site that I built, there was like a list of resources.
Yeah, I remember that.
And is WordPress site with some plugins, and the plugins definitely complicated things, but that was only nasty stuff. But dude, if you have just like a couple drop downs, you have a modal here to confirm there, right? Like you have an alert, you have a mobile, like a nav, you have, then even if for complex stuff, like it was kind of refreshing to just go back to raw JavaScript. for a while, and then
because you get control.
yeah, and then what I found myself basically not doing but wanting to do, because I was lazy as WordPress, was I wanted to make some PHP include like basically components
A
for
bit of the old
common.
functions PHP.
Yeah. But like the combination of Tailwind and Alpine and PHP was extremely productive, like extremely productive.
Yeah, like what did you spend, like 12 minutes total?
It was fast. Once I knew what I wanted to do, executing was extremely straightforward. And then the payload of this site is like 6 kilobytes. There's 12 kilobytes.
Unbelievable.
Maybe it's 20, but it's not 50.
Hold on, now you're gonna get yelled at by Google over that. You break the 20 kilobyte top
I
end.
think Alpine is 6. I think you
Fucking
can't get around
A.
load jading. You have to load jQuery for WordPress pretty much. So you can't really get around that, but whatever.
Can I do a little drink check?
Yeah.
What are you drinking here today, bud?
Literally nothing.
Nothing.
I'm stone cold dry, actually.
Stone cold dry, like you don't have any
I have
booze?
No, I have to drive.
Oh.
Yeah. So,
How far?
an hour and a half. I can drive back to the city.
Oh, that's a tough one. Yeah, it's not like a 15 minutes down the road type thing.
No, Ken, even if it was, that's not
I mean, it depends. The 2 beers, sure. 8 beers, nah. Whatever. I actually have some cider.
Ooh.
Got some cider. Should be good.
So,
oh man, I'll tell you what, dude. I got this Hibiki whiskey. Have you ever had that?
I saw. Of course, it's the amazing
Oh my
Centauri whiskey from. The question is, I actually
God.
think that their quality has gone down, or I think it's coming back. It went down for a couple of years because it was so popular and they like ran out, so they started blending it.
Yeah.
But now it's back. I think, if I recall.
Man, I'll tell you what, that is good whiskey, and it's a shame that it costs what it does because I like it a lot, and you know how I go through whiskey.
Yeah, no, the Hibiki stuff is amazing.
Bottle's half gone.
Yeah, all the Centauri, that's the parent company, I think.
Yeah,
is phenomenal.
Really, really good whiskey. Because I've been partial to bourbon for a couple years now.
I feel that. But yeah, I love the Japanese stuff. So are you going to? So what I think personally, what I think the most exciting part about this week is that, if anything, I feel like this is a massive win. Assuming this stuff works out, and assuming we do finish porting PHP into React, I'm kind of excited for the the productivity boost for doing kind of stupid stuff, like going directly from your database right to your template, like where that's not going to be like scalable, whatever that means, right? But crazy fast for like developer productivity.
I like it. I think the whole like do a select inside of a component is magical for me.
Yeah, I mean, also magical for hackers with SQL injection for sure.
Yeah.
Right. Like, but I think that's going to open the door for so many things. Being able to query in render basically is so massive. And the fact that it looks sync means that it really is just going to look like PHP at the end of the day, right? Like it's going to be extremely.
And again, the blessed thing is Postgres. And have you ever gotten a Postgres error with a query?
No.
Makes me want to punch myself in the fucking nuts trying to debug that shit.
Is it bad?
It's real bad.
I actually have only limited. I mean, I've done some stuff with Postgres, but it's not my day to day.
It's fucking devastating.
Is it really bad, the error message flow?
Well, what happens is like you have like this SQL query, right? And it's like a ton of shit, right? If you're doing something non-trivial, right? It's like a ton of fucking statements and whatever.
Left join, right join.
And what they'll tell you is they'll be like, fucking there's a bad character after a parenthesis. And we're like, well, okay, well, fuck. Like, where?
Oh
right?
My gosh, you're gonna need to have like, oh my goodness, you're right. That's just gonna, well, those issues exist right now, right? They're just some backend engineer has to deal with it instead of a front end engineer.
Yeah, dude, it's fucking devastating. Like, that's like a node for me. Like, that's not like in my React just yet, but
yeah,
I do both, right? It's like a full stacky kind of ordeal. So I deal with both, but I'm really looking forward to dealing with that on the front end.
I'm much more. I personally just enjoy NoSQL databases far more. I find that
infinitely so.
Basically, like we have code. We have this thing that it can express logic extremely well. Why would you use an inferior programming language to express logic?
So we got a comment, no use ORMs. And for the most part, no, actually.
Yeah, neither do I.
They're fucking slow as shit.
The what you want to do, if you, instead of using an ORM, and even if you do use an ORM, is to abstract it away from your actual like control the rest of your application, so you can change it out later. I'm actually going through this right now with Formium, right? Massive enterprise client wants to doesn't support one of the databases we use and asked me to like rewrite this. Kind of a pain in the ass because I'm not using an ORM, but everything's so well abstracted, because we basically put a facade in between when we talk what we talk to the database with and the actual application, that it's not going to be horrendous. But no, ORMs, no bueno.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about like a modern ORM because I haven't fucking used one in so long. But like,
what's a modern ORM?
Like I don't even know. I don't know. I fucking have not touched it, so I wouldn't know. Maybe there's something out that's good, but like back in my day, I mean, right? Like people would be like, "Oh, this page is fucked up," right? And I'd go and I'd be like, "Okay, fuck this. I'm gonna write the query manually," and you'd see like a 90% speed increase.
Yeah, I mean that makes tons of sense. For me, it's like you can get pigeonholed with an ORM. You can never get pigeonholed writing a raw query. And I certainly I can understand why you'd want to have an ORM for SQL, because not every dev knows SQL, and it's way easier to be like has many than dealing with like joins and stuff, right? Or you just use like Dynamo or Mongo or any other NoSQL and not deal with this shit.
Yeah, I like NoSQL. I enjoy that.
I find it much more. I like, at least for a lot of CRUD applications, it much more easily models to.
I'm like, well, this is straightforward. It matches what I'm doing on the client.
Right. It matches state, right? Which is both a blessing and a curse. And at the end of the day, when that stops scaling, I'm going to be rich as fuck. So I won't care.
It's a new problem.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think it'll be very fun to see this back-end stuff come into play. I also, though, feel like there's something we're going to lose from basically the shift to the server, but I'm not exactly sure what. Like, I feel like it makes me sad that we're not, like, the solution is to fight native, is to shift to the server. Seems like the browser can't do it all. So like there's
it's defeat, really.
You think so?
Yeah, I do.
Explain why.
Well, it's like, so I made a game for my kids in iOS, right? Using SpriteKit.
Okay.
And I wrote Swift. And the experience was unfucking believable. Like, I've made, like, there's some things that are constant when you're making games. I made React Game Kit, right? And like a lot of this shit, like I put together from JS libraries, right? So a lot of the things that you see taking place in a game, right, I've written from scratch on a number of occasions. And when I went to go do this in iOS, and I don't even fucking write iOS that much, but when I went to go write it, it was all there. It was all there, and it was terse, and it was taken care of for you, right?
What are some of these things?
Things like views, right? Things like running through sprites, things like fucking physics, things like routing and view management, right? Like this shit is all built in to the iOS SDK or any of the like the standard libraries or anything like that, right? Like I'm not reaching out to anything third party to do this, right? Like it's all in iOS. Like I'm not going to GitHub. None of this.
Rooting around for little widgets and things.
I'm not seeing if shit is maintained or not. It is fucking iOS SDK, and it's all there, right? So, they're sitting here talking about, oh well, we could put we save 30% by moving some of our shit to the server, right? But That's not the real problem. The real problem is, why the fuck is that so much code? And it's not implementation, right? That's the thing that people fail to realize, is that your actual app code that you're writing, right, that isn't fucking libraries, right, is very small.
Oh, most, I'd say, yeah.
Yeah, like what is it? Like fucking 10 kilobytes, if that. Like, it's very small, right? The problem is compounding dependencies, right? So, first of all, right, if you need things for an app, chances are the web doesn't provide them to you.
Mm-hmm.
So then you say, oh, well, fuck, like how the fuck do I format a date? And
So
they're
now
like,
you
oh
install
yeah,
data
you can write
finesse,
like this like 200 line class using the date API and go fuck yourself. And then you're like, actually, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go install this date library, right?
right?
And then the date library goes and installs 100 dependencies throughout its
Yep.
hierarchical chain of dependency, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or anything like that, right? It'll go through, and then this huge dependency graph, right? And it fucking slows everything the fuck down. And it's all just so you can get a fucking date formatted the way that you want it. And like, why isn't that in the browser?
Or even I think higher level, right? I think you take a big team, you build a modal, and they use the dependency. And then another team's like, well, that's not exactly what we want, and we're too lazy to update that all the existing ones, so let's just change them. And they add a new modal, and they use a different library, right? Now you have two modal libraries that are kind of the same but different. Instead of like
And they
platform,
import other shit too.
and then they just and then they need a little CSS, and then this is just creeps on and creeps on and creeps on. Or like charts, they're like, oh well, we're not going to rewrite the old charts with that library. We're just going to install a new charting
We're gonna
library,
use these fucking other charts.
right? So it's like, and that's like the road to death.
Like, where are these fucking utilities? Like, like it's
It's just
clearly
yeah.
used. Like, you could narrow down the shit that's gonna be on a web page to like fucking like 40 things.
Well, that's where I think React Native Web was onto something, right? Like by giving you the constraints of React. Now, I'm not saying it was perfect or it is, but by giving you the constraints of React Native's APIs for things, at least it was like you're not going to install 75,000 libraries. I mean, you still might, but it's like you're not going to make your own. You're not going to re-implement a bad text input, right? You're going to just use their text input. And they did some basics, but it wasn't like it wasn't feature complete. The same way you still need React Native libraries for things. It only went that far, right?
Yeah. But the only reason that you need React Native libraries is because React Native didn't implement the shit that already exists in the native platform.
Well, that's what I'm so curious about. Is that like why doesn't React Native implement like what is it, the
All
animation
of
library, like
iOS.
reanimated or like the bottom sheet stuff? Like why isn't that part of the core?
I don't know. Maybe size.
It just seems like for React Native's purposes, it seems like there'd be a massive benefit to taking a lot of that stuff and making it like part of the
Some
framework.
of it's also difficult to express in like a tag-based declarative system.
Well, that's why you need the bridge stuff, right?
Yeah.
I found that very interesting. But is that just like a we don't need it? We have our own at Facebook maybe thing. But I also think React Native's ecosystem is a little bit strange with the whole not strange. It's just different than the React DOM ecosystem with Expo's role.
Yeah.
Because Expo is like the consumerized version of React Native. I don't know a ton of people that are using.
And
That
what
don't
you
use Expo
see
at this
in
point.
Expo is they built in the shit.
Yeah. Like they're
Right?
doing auth now, right? Like they handle all the auth stuff. Like they
Like
handle.
they have the opportunity to build these things in, and
Shout out to
they've
Britt,
done
by
it,
the
and
way.
it's fucking amazing.
Yeah, no, it's pretty sweet. The thing that I always would bother me a little bit about React Native, and there's nothing about this, is a little bit of Objective C, a little bit of Swift, a decent amount of Java or Kotlin for Android, right? But like for people who don't know that, while it is very cool to work on React Native, and this was my experience with it, like even 2 years ago, when something goes wrong, it gets weird because you don't know what is
Yeah.
wrong. You're like, is this some lower
That
level
shit
thing that I
goes riggedy
misconfigured?
wrong.
Right? Or is this like some like native thing and that I don't know about? Or is this some JavaScript thing or some React thing? And so it introduces this interesting like variable that if you work in React DOM, you just don't deal with. Right? You don't deal with some platform thing that's not working.
Yeah, I mean, even some of the error messages are probably fucking pretty unwieldy if you haven't done any of that shit.
Yeah, but I still think it's amazing. You can write React and deploy native. It's insane, right? Like that's crazy.
It's fucking sick, is what it
And they
is.
just released the build server, the Expo. That's pretty cool. Which is I'm just saying the experience is awesome, but I've heard that it helps to have some native experience. Basically, it doesn't hurt.
It does. I mean, you sit there and you say like, oh, I can build all this shit with divs and spans, kind of like I do on the web, and you can, and it's fucking faster, which is hilarious. Um, but at some point in time, you actually do need to hook into something.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first React Native thing I ever wrote was an orientation listener.
Okay.
Like that wasn't built in. So in order to like know like whether you're in landscape or portrait, right? And it's little things like that where it's
I
like
had to do one where it was I wanted to link into the health kit data for the on the Apple Watch.
oh,
And
good
that's
luck.
like not native to. You can't do it with.
Did you actually do that or did you go fuck yourself?
Nah, I gave up.
Yeah, I was gonna say because that's fucking hard.
It's just very native. I mean, someone's done it before. It's just like you have to break out at the time. You have to break out of the Expo model. Like you have to break out. You have to do Expo bare instead of the managed workflow. And I was like, not.
Oh yeah, no, you got to write the module yourself.
I think someone did. I just was not trying to like not. I wanted to use Expo. Like I'm not.
Yeah.
Right. So, what I learned now is that some people do this thing with like an Apple shortcut and like post their health kit data to an endpoint.
Wow.
To like hack it. But obviously that means your users have to install some like build a shortcut, which is not great, obviously.
I have a shortcut that I use today. I love this shortcut. It converts HEIC files to JPEG.
HEIC is what? That's the Apple native? That's
It's like the iPhone, whatever the fuck comes off the iPhone. It's like HEIC files. And if you're gonna like put it somewhere, right? They're like, what the fuck is an HEIC file? I'm like, you're telling me.
Yeah. I have one that does GIFs to video to GIF, whatever.
Nice.
I have one that downloads all the images of a web page, even if they're in WebP, and converts them to like, so like if you're on Reddit or if you're on
WebP, you would be on Reddit.
No, if you're on any site that's like.
Are you an active Redditor?
I read Reddit every day.
I read a fair deal of Reddit. I have 2 Reddits though.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
What is this? Amateur
hour? Yeah, no. If you know what's going on, then you know what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. But
speaking of devil, you got any picks for this week, man?
Yeah. Okay, picks for the week. I mean, I would go with have to think. I don't know. You go first. I need a second.
My pick for week is definitely going to be that Hibiki whiskey. Obviously. That's number 1. Number 2, I found out my brother's not coming down from New York for Christmas. No, it's okay. He's going to hang out and beat off whatever he does. So I wasn't going to be able to give him the present. So I sent it to his house with Amazon. I sent him one and I kept the original one, and it's a pocket operator. He's not watching this, but it's have you ever fucking played with one of these pocket operators?
No.
They're fucking unbelievable. Dude, listen to this.
That's fun.
Like you could just make like music. Like you see this shit? Like
that's pretty sweet. You gotta hold up the mic closer.
Like you could just make music with this little thing, dude.
Size of a phone. That's pretty cool.
Dude, look at this fucking thing. It's crazy.
That's awesome.
Whoa. Yeah, it's really fun piece of engineering because it's like not terribly complex, but
have you gotten
also
into
complex.
Like Raspberry Pi, like Arduino?
Like, oh yeah, dude. I built all kinds of shit, dude. I built like animatronic skeletons. Fucking,
you have like the crossbow and stuff like that, and like all that. But have you seen? Speaking of Reddit and like Arduino stuff, have you seen the CyberDeck Reddit?
No.
Okay, so there's this Reddit CyberDeck, which is this community of people who make little computers that are for like basically for the end of the world, like, and they are in like awesome casing that makes them look like in like Fallout or something like that. Like, yeah, CyberDecks, and they're all like cyberpunk mini computers. Basically, they're sick, and like they all like 3D print the cases, and like they have cool toggles and cool switches and like mini keyboards, and like they're in like gun cases and stuff, or like they just look awesome. It's so sick. So maybe that's my pick. Cyber r/cyber deck.
Oh man, do you know what kind of fucking rabbit hole you just sent me on?
Oh yeah, dude. So I don't know. I've been thinking about, like, I asked because you can get the kits and stuff, but you gotta get a 3D printer, and like obviously it's a Raspberry Pi, so like it's basically a useless computer, like for doing anything with. But it looks so sick.
No, you can actually do a lot on a Raspberry Pi, believe it or not.
No, I know you can, but it's not like you're gonna, like, you can play around with it, but it's not like you're gonna like work on it. Obviously,
You can work on it.
you could, but like, why? Oh, I just ordered my M1, so that's my other pick, I guess. I ordered the M1 Air.
Sick. You fucking nerd.
So that's why I already have a small computer coming.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, this cyber decks are super slick. You should, Jeff, you'd probably get a kick out of that.
Yeah, I have a bunch of pies and fucking
I've seen
3D printer, all that
like
shit.
Rack your pies and make like a cluster and then like toss Kubernetes on it.
I bet.
Swear to God, like there's like some like Raspberry Pi Kubernetes thing.
Raspberry Pi home server cluster.
And you could technically like hook it up through a LAN service, like a tunneling service, like an ngrok, and like actually host a website on it. Like,
yeah.
Go like old school.
Rack. Ngrok.
There's another one I forgot the name of. There are a couple other tunneling services now that are as good or similar. But anyways, yeah. So I guess my picks can be M1 and Cyberdex.
Sick.
Pretty decent picks there. So yeah, I mean, on this, I guess we'll wrap this up. This is a little Christmas episode.
That's right. I'm gonna go put on a fucking sweater.
Ooh, ugly or beautiful Christmas sweater.
It's ugly.
So final takes, final summary on React server components, shifting to the server. Give me a little final word here, Mr. Kenneth.
My final take.
Final take.
I'll give a shit when it's released.
Ooh.
Hey.
Wow.
Your final take.
I'm pumped, dude. It's been a while. And reading the feedback from the Twitter feedback on people who are tweaked, like the data fetching people, even the like, Oracle team, dude, they're like fucking zonked. Like, I feel like people have gotten too comfortable, man. Like, you guys all forget, like 2016, 2017, 2018, like nothing was guaranteed.
Yeah.
Like libraries that was a JS fatigue years, man. Like I kind of liked it, kept everybody on their toes.
Yeah, I liked it too. But
like, things settled, but like, things came in and out and you didn't know it was coming. At any moment, your awesome library just get completely, usurped by something better because the playing field changed. I feel like, I don't know. I like that unknown.
I'll be interested to see what people do with it.
I'm pumped. I'm excited. But on that fine note, folks, happy holidays. This has been an episode of the Undefined podcast. You can follow us on the interwebs at undefined.fm or on Twitter at the undefined.io. Again, I'm Jared Palmer.
And I'm Ken Wheeler.
And we'll see you next week, folks.
I want you to have a nice day.
Yeah. Word.
Also, fuck you.
Peace.